Hey, I'm Stan. Before we get into this one, a confession. I didn't land my first real engineering job until I was 36. Before that, a stack of failed jobs and one little art studio back in Chicago that went under and took my savings with it. So the first time I ever sat down and added up my own net worth, I was almost 40, staring at a small number, dead sure everybody my age was a decade ahead of me. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, counting every dollar, so feeling behind was an old, familiar feeling. But here's what nobody ever told me: there's an actual ruler for this. Where are you supposed to be by your age? Real numbers, not a headline. So I went and found that ruler, and today I'm holding it up next to your number, and by the end, you're going to know exactly where you stand. Let's start at a kitchen table.
Renee found the calculator app at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night after the kids were down, and she typed in one number, what she owned, minus what she owed. It came out to about $190,000, and she sat there deciding whether that made her rich, broke, or something she didn't have a word for. She's not alone at that table tonight. Right now, all over the country, people are quietly doing the same subtraction. Adding up the house, the car, the retirement account, the checking account, subtracting the mortgage, the student loans, the credit card, and landing on one number. Then comes the hard part, not the math, the comparison. Because a number by itself means nothing. $190,000 only becomes rich or broke when you set it next to everybody else's. And almost nobody has any idea where they actually stand. So tonight, we're going to figure out exactly where you stand, not against a headline, not against the guy on the internet with a boat, against the real numbers from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the biggest, most careful count of American wealth there is. By the end, you'll know your rank, and I think it's going to surprise you. Let's start with the tool, because it's simpler than the finance world wants you to believe. Your net worth is one line on a napkin. Everything you own minus everything you owe. That's it. The paid-off part of your house counts. Your retirement account counts. The $1,100 in checking counts. Then you subtract the debts, and whatever's left standing is your number. Write it down. Because the moment you have it, something interesting happens. That number stops being private. The Fed can take it and tell you, with real data, where you're standing in the room. And the room is how I want you to picture this whole thing. Imagine everybody your age, every single one of them, lined up in one enormous room. Poorest person pressed against the door on the left. Richest person way over at the far wall on the right. Everybody else spread out in between, in order. Your net worth decides one thing: where you're standing in that line. That spot is your percentile. That's the whole game. Now, before we place you, I have to clear one lie out of the way, because it's the reason most people feel behind when they're not. You've heard the phrase, the average American. The average net worth in this country is about $1,060,000. Say that out loud at a dinner table and watch the room go quiet. $1 million. If that's average, and you've got 190,000, you must be drowning. Except, it's a lie, not a rounding error, a genuine structural lie. Here's why. The average, the mean, takes everybody's wealth, piles it into one giant heap, and divides by the number of people. Sounds fair. But watch what happens when a billionaire walks into the room. One person. $10 billion. Line up 100 regular families with a billionaire, add it all up, divide by 101, and suddenly the average family in that room looks like they have $100 million. Nobody's richer. The math just got poisoned by the guy at the far wall. That's what the average net worth is. It's you and 99 of your neighbors and Elon Musk all thrown in a blender. The number that comes out describes exactly none of you. So we throw it out. And we use the honest number instead. It's called the median. The median is dead simple. It's the person standing in the exact middle of the room. Half the room is behind them, half ahead. One billionaire at the far wall can't move the middle person even an inch because there's still just one body in the line. The median is where a normal household actually lives. And the median tells a completely different story. The average American has about $1 million. The median American, the real middle of the room, has about $192,000. The average is more than 5 times bigger than the median. 5 times. That entire gap? That's not wealth. That's distortion. That's the far wall bleeding into a number that was supposed to describe the middle. Remember that word, median. The average is the lie. The median is the truth. Every time you see a headline about the average, net worth, someone is quietly measuring you against a billionaire and letting you feel poor about it. So let's line the room up by age, using the median, the honest middle, and let's find your spot. If you're under 35, the middle of your room has a net worth of about $39,000. That's it. So if you're 29 and you've clawed your way to about 40 grand between a starter retirement account and a used car that's finally paid off, you are not behind. You are standing dead center of everyone your age. Half of them are behind you. Sit with that, because I promise nobody told you. And here's the part that should give you some hope. That under 35 number used to be about $14,000 just 3 years earlier. It jumped to $39,000. The youngest households gained the most, fastest, houses, stock market, a weird few years. The point is, the middle of the room moved. It's not a stone, it slides. Now let's walk forward in age, one step at a time, because this is where the room is supposed to start climbing. Ages 35 to 44, the middle sits at around $135,000. If you're 40 and you're sitting near that, you're not falling behind. You're standing right where the middle of the room stands. On the number, you're fine. It's the comparison that was hurting you. Now take one step forward. Cross into 45 to 54, and the middle jumps to about $247,000. This is the messy middle of life. The daycare and the braces and the roof that needs doing, and underneath all of it, quietly, the number keeps climbing. The house is paying down. The retirement account is compounding. Picture Renee again at that kitchen table, hers at about $190,000. She's 38. The middle of her bracket is about $135,000. She's not average. She's ahead of the middle of her own age, comfortably. She just spent 5 years feeling broke because she was staring at $1 million headline instead of the person standing next to her in line. Let's keep walking, because the room does something surprising near the end. Ages 55 to 64, the middle rises to about $364,000. The peak years of earning, the mortgage finally getting small. Take one more step. 65 to 74, it peaks at about $410,000. That's the top of the mountain, the highest the middle of the room ever stands. And then, watch what happens. For households 75 and older, the middle number actually drops, down to about $335,000. Now, a headline would call that a crisis. Retirees getting poorer. But it's not failure, it's the plan working. That drop is people spending down what they spent 40 years building. The account is supposed to shrink, that's what it was for. It means the finish line was never the biggest number. The finish line is a number that lasts as long as you do. If you're staring at your parents' accounts going down and panicking, breathe. Going down slowly, on purpose, is what a well-built number does at the end. I want to stop the tour for a second because I owe you a confession, and it's the whole reason I make these. A few years back, I did this exact calculation on myself. Sunday afternoon, legal pad, same subtraction. And my number came out lower than I wanted it to be. Not embarrassing, just lower than the story I'd been telling myself. And I did the dumbest thing a person can do with a net worth. I opened my phone and I started comparing. The friend with the bigger house. The cousin who does something with crypto. I built a little far wall in my own head and stood myself against it, and I felt about 2 inches tall. My wife walked in, looked at me hunched over this pad, and asked what was wrong. I said, "I think I'm behind." She said, "But..." And I didn't have an answer. Because I wasn't measuring against the middle of the room. I was measuring against the richest person I could think of. That's not a net worth problem. That's a comparison problem. And it's the exact trap I'm trying to pull you out of right now. Okay, back to the room. Because so far we've been finding the middle, and some of you don't want the middle. You want to know what the top costs. Fair. Let's price it. Start with the first rung. To stand in the top 25% of the whole country, the near side of the far wall, you need a net worth of about $659,000. Now climb one rung higher. To crack the top 10%, it's about $1.9 million. Notice how far that jumped from the last rung. That's the staircase getting steep. And the top rung. To reach the top 1%, the far wall itself, you need at least about $11.5 million. And notice how fast that staircase gets steep. From the middle of the room to the top 10% isn't a step, it's a leap across the whole floor. Take the 45 to 54 crowd. The middle is about 247,000. But the top 10% of that same age group starts around $2 million. Same age, same room. And the distance from the middle to the top 10th is roughly 8 times over. The far wall isn't a little further along. It's in a different building. Which raises the obvious question, who's got all of it? Because if the middle of the country is sitting at a couple $100,000, where did the $1 million average come from? Here's where. The top 10% of households hold about 60% of all the wealth in the country. 10 people out of 100 holding 60 cents of every single dollar. And the top 1%, that's one household out of 100, holds about 27% of everything. One person. More than a quarter of the whole room's money. That's the answer to the lie. That's why the average is $1 million, while the middle is 200,000. The room isn't just uneven, it's tilted hard toward the far wall, and most of the money has slid down into the corner where the fewest people are standing. When you compare yourself to the average, you are comparing yourself to that corner. Of course you feel behind. You are handed a crooked ruler. So place yourself against the middle, always the middle. That's the honest room. Now I have to complicate your number one more time, because two people can stand in the exact same spot in that room and be living completely different lives. Say, two families both have a net worth of about $300,000. Same spot in the line. But for most of the country, for the middle and below, that number is mostly one thing: home equity. The paid down part of the house. Your net worth for most Americans basically is your house. It's real. It counts. But you can't spend a kitchen. You can't send a bedroom to cover a medical bill. For the folks up near the far wall, that same $300,000 looks nothing alike. Theirs is mostly stocks, business ownership, money that's liquid, that works, that you can move on a Tuesday. And retirement accounts, the thing everyone assumes is the backbone of American wealth, are only about a fifth of all the wealth in the country. Barely half of households have one at all. So here's the honest version. Your net worth number tells you where you're standing in the room, but what that number is made of tells you how much of it you can actually use. A big number locked entirely in a house you love and won't sell is a different life than a smaller number sitting in investments you can touch. Same rank, different freedom. When you write your number down, write down what it's made of too. Which brings us to the last thing, and the most important one. Because everything we just did, every threshold, every median, every spot in the room, is a photograph, not a verdict. The number you calculated at the kitchen table tonight is a snapshot of one Tuesday. It is not a grade on your life. The whole middle of the room slid up for an entire generation in 3 years. Remember the under 35s going from 14,000 to 39. The room moves. And you move in it using only 2 levers, both of which are yours. What you own, going up. What you owe, going up. What you owe, going down. That's the entire machine. Everything else is noise. Nobody in this story is the villain, not the person at the far wall, not the neighbor with the boat, not you for feeling behind when you weren't. The only real enemy here was the crooked ruler, the average, the headline, the billionaire quietly hiding inside a number that was never about him. So do the honest thing. Find your number. Set it next to the middle of your own age, not the mountaintop. And then decide, calmly, which direction you want to walk across the room. Renee closed the calculator that night. $190,000. 38 years old. Ahead of the middle of her room, and she'd never once let herself know it. She didn't feel rich, but for the first time she stopped feeling behind. And honestly, that's most of the battle. If nobody's ever shown you the honest room before, if every number you've ever measured yourself against turns out to have had a billionaire hiding inside it, then subscribe. That's the whole reason. Before you go, here's the whole thing in one breath. The average is a lie. A few billionaires drag it up to about $1 million. Your real yardstick is the median, about 192,000. Beat the middle for your own age, and you're ahead of half the room. Under 35, the middle is only 39,000. The bar is low on purpose, so don't panic. And the ladder to the top, about 659,000, puts you in the top 25%. 1.9 million, the top 10%. 11.5 million, the top 1%. Remember, your number is a snapshot, not a verdict, and two levers are always yours: own more and owe less.